Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And our producer, Brennan, is joining us, even though you can't see him, but you can see the wonderful graphics that he makes every single week because, yeah, man, that's why he's here. He's here to make this show what it should be and not the. I had the live show on in the background, and I could hear it, and it threw me off because I was hearing my own voice. I'm like, why am I hearing my own voice right now?
There we go.
Yeah, we all make mistakes in life. Anyway, we are predicting the 2025 college football playoff on today's show. That will start Friday with the first round games: Alabama versus Oklahoma, Oregon versus James Madison, Tulane versus Ole Miss, which I think is becoming a more weirdly intriguing conversation by the day because Ole Miss is not going to have its head coach, and they might not have their starting quarterback, who apparently is entering the transfer portal and deciding whether he's going to play in that game, but then also Texas A&M and Miami. And the winner of that game, the A&M Miami game, will play Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl on December 31st. We're just going to get straight into it. Stefan, before we get into what your predictions were, I think last year it was just a wash through the first round of the college football playoff. All the home teams won. Do you think there are more intriguing matchups where maybe we see a couple of road teams pull off some upsets this year?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I've got a couple of road upsets actually in my bracket. I think it's the people who hated the 12-team playoff and the way it played out last year. I would advise you to be a bit more patient and wait to see how it pans out this year. I think restructuring the seeding is really important. It's going to give us, I think, some better second, third, fourth round games, but I think also we've got some pretty intriguing matchups early on, right? Because it felt like last year Penn State was a team worthy of probably getting a bye, right? Ohio State was a team worthy of being at least higher up in the seeding than being, an 8 seed that hosts a Tennessee. So I think it all feels a bit more proper now, I guess, that we've restructured the formatting and the seeding of this thing. And I think it's about to be a pretty good first round. I think they're, obviously some of these matchups set up to maybe be a bit of a blowout, but it's an anomaly year where the ACC champ didn't get in and we have two G5 teams and you kind of have to, take that for what it is. But I think most years, if you were to look at this bracket and say, hey, instead of one more G5, there's an ACC champ thrown in there. And you would assume that maybe the ACC champ is a decent team and not, a Duke or something like that. And normal years, I think this would be pretty good setup and have some pretty good first round matchups. So I'm excited. I'm pumped. Last year, obviously, Ohio State played in the first round. So we were very, work centric. I'm excited to sit back and watch college football on Friday night and all day Saturday. And, there's some NFL on Saturday too. The Bears play the team up north again. So we get to run that back. It's a pretty good football weekend kind of leading into, obviously a good second round of college football playoff games and, a fun NFL schedule built around Christmas as well.
I think Stefan mentioning the Bears is about 3 podcasts away from becoming a drinking game for whoever listens to this podcast. It's like you just slip that in there. It's the NFL, the Bears playing. Like, okay.
I mean, listen, the other NFL game is Gillis taking on the Eagles, right? So I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Go Eagles. It's
so
imperative that the Eagles win.
So a frustrated Commanders fan versus a frustrated Eagles fan base, essentially, is what that game is.
Woohoo, yeah.
The Eagles are like the Buckeyes of the NFL right now, where it's a lot of frustration. It's like, you won. What are you talking about? Yeah, but this didn't go right. And then they end up being validated on the back end to that. We'll start with Alabama at Oklahoma, which I think is an intriguing 8-9 matchup. And that's the Friday night game at 8:30, as you can see, because of the wonderful graphic that Brennan put up there. I would not have known what time that game started without this graphic. I'm so serious. I'd have been sitting here like, what time does that game start? Oh, it's the Friday night game. Stefan, you are up first. Bama, Oklahoma, a team who can throw it and cover but not run the ball or stop the run versus a team who's got an awesome defense and the September Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, this is my first time seeing what time kickoff is. Thanks for that, Brennan. When as a society did we agree that prime time is 8:30 p.m. now? Like, what wasn't it like 7 o'clock would be like primetime games before, and now it's like Monday Night Football last night started at like 8:15. Sunday Night Football starts at like 8:20. When did we as a society make that shift?
When all the famous people started moving out west.
That's fair. Okay, let's talk about this game. I'm going with Bama. I really do not like this Alabama team, and I really don't like this Oklahoma team. So I'm not. This is not the most enticing matchup in the sense of two good teams, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's two pretty good defenses against two offenses that have had highs and lows this season. Alabama being a slight favorite, as you can see on a graphic, 1.5 points is intriguing, right? Because you look at this on paper, you say the home team beat this team on the road earlier this season. Why are they now the underdog?
Mm-hmm.
It's because Alabama had 406 yards in that first matchup and Oklahoma had 212. And it feels like maybe the Big Ten championship game is a good comparison where it feels like the team that played better for a lot of stretches kind of made mistakes on its own side, and if you get that cleaned up a bit, maybe you feel like you get a different result. Now, the Indiana Ohio State thing is interesting because I think Indiana is a good team, right? I don't know if you could say that about these two teams here, but I've got confidence in Kalen DeBoer with time to lead up to this game, to get his team ready and put on a better performance than it did the last time they played Oklahoma. So I'm going with Bama here. I'm not overly confident in it, but I'll take the Crimson Tide to win and advance to the Rose Bowl.
And that would be our first lower seed win in a first round game where the home team did not win in a game like this. Andrew, Bama or Boomer Sooner?
I'm taking Bama too.
This is gonna be boring.
Yeah, I don't like either one of these teams. I felt a little bit like Steven in the last few weeks of the season because I was arguing that for some reason Alabama and Oklahoma got passes with their 10-2 record and Miami didn't and Notre Dame didn't. And I was really confused by that because it was like, hey, if you take out the blowout loss at the beginning of the year for Bama, the blowout loss at the end of the year for Bama, and the loss in the middle of the season for Bama, they're actually pretty good. And if you actually just ignore offense, Oklahoma's pretty good. So I kind of like looked at both of those teams and I went, I think Miami's better than both of these teams. I think Notre Dame is better than both these teams. I think both these teams are not that good. I think Indiana has not to spoil it, I think Indiana has a very intriguing matchup in the second round for what their possibilities could be. But yeah, like go look at that first game. Oklahoma kicked a field goal. I'm looking at it right now at the game log. 87-yard touchdown return by Eli Bowen. That put them up 10-0. Alabama had a field goal blocked, and it was It was actually like a really smart play by whoever the kid from Oklahoma was, where it's like there's a leaping penalty, but only if you're not stationary at the start of the snap. And he was stationary, so he like, oh yeah, he said he did. Like he said he apparently they talked it through with the refs. So he was stationary, leaped over the center, which like I don't care if it's penalty, if you knew it, whatever. Being stationary, leaping over another human being, super impressive. So he did that and blocked the kick, and Alabama still had the ball back with a chance to win. Oklahoma's defense is legit, but Oklahoma's offense is going to lose them something down the stretch. Ty Simpson threw for 326 yards in this game. Alabama still can't run the ball. They're not going to be able to run the ball. They're not going to be able to run the ball against anybody in this tournament. But Alabama's the better team. Alabama, I saw this line come out, and I was kind of hoping that Oklahoma was going to be favored just so I could take the Tide. But yeah, Alabama's going to win. Alabama, I thought, had an argument to winning that game a couple of weeks ago, and it just so happens that they play again, and Tide move on to the Rose Bowl.
Alabama can throw the ball. Oklahoma can't throw the ball. And I think you have to be able to throw the ball to win national championships. Even in this new world of clock rules, and I know quarterbacks are not putting up 350 every single week like they used to, but you have to be able to throw the ball to win games because you have to be able to take a top off of defense, especially this year where I think you can make a case that the top, excluding the G5 from this conversation, these are some of the best defenses in college football across the board here. Even, I mean, when we get into some of these other matchups, there's like really good front sevens all over the place. So yeah, Alabama can't run the ball, but I'm not sure how many teams in this playoff are going to be able to consistently be dominant in the run game anyway. So if you can't hit somebody over the top, I can't trust you to win a college football playoff game, even if it's in your own backyard. That's why I took Alabama. Alabama should not be in the college football playoff. I'm just going to be real with you. They should not be in the college football playoff. But we're here now. They're in the college football playoff, and they do have an element that if they get hot, they can go on a run. Unfortunately, I think their path is very similar to Ohio State's last year, only I think I would times that by 2 because they have to start on the road, while Ohio State at least got the start in its own backyard. Granted, it was 2 degrees outside, so I don't – okay. You got to sleep in your own hotel room the night before instead of a hotel room in Tennessee. But still, I think playing at home does help. It helps you build some momentum here. But if Alabama gets hot, I think they can be interesting. And I think it's why they win this first game. That's all I got, Alabama, Oklahoma. I don't want to talk about mid-SEC teams, but for too long.
Can I add an interesting twist or maybe a bit of a reminder, since this is the first playoff game? We just got an email from the college football playoff. I don't think this is breaking news. I think it's a reminder of news that was maybe in the offseason. The teams have to submit their availability report and make it public.
Yes.
By 7 p.m. 3 days before the game. So we'll know tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time, that is 8 p.m. Eastern, at least an initial availability report for Alabama, Oklahoma. Tomorrow, I'm sure then we'll get the rest of the games that we're about to talk about in the first round. So December 28th, we'll get our first Ohio State availability report for the Cotton Bowl. And then they're supposed to, I guess, provide updates periodically. And then 90 minutes before kickoff, we get the final availability report. And the designations are it's vast. Available, probable, questionable, doubtful, or out. So it can be literally anywhere on the realm of possibility. But I think it's interesting because, in this context of, Stephen, you mentioned on our Monday podcast about the possibility of Tegra Shabola dealing with an injury and being out regardless of what plays out at right guard. We'll know in theory by December 28th, like in writing, where exactly Tegra's status is. So I think that's an interesting twist that we haven't dealt with this year, because the Big Ten's rule has been 2 hours before kickoff is the only availability report we get. The SEC already kind of does this, but this is new for the Big Ten teams. And last year, I think it was no availability report whatsoever, unless it was a conference team. Like, I think, was Ohio State, Oregon the only availability report we got last year in the playoffs?
Yeah, because then you just abided by your conference's rules.
Right.
I mean, this is all great. This is Ohio State. Like, sure, we're going to get multiple availability reports, but as we have learned over the last 7 years, they sometimes can mean squat. So, but yes, more than yeah, sure. Availability reports in Ohio State are just not, they don't use them the way they should use them, I guess, but it is what it is. I guess, it is what it is. Miami, Texas A&M. Let's move on. Before we get into what our predictions are going to be, I do want to ask you guys this question, and I'm actually going to ask our texters later this week, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. If you are an Ohio State fan and you are Ohio State, Stefan, who would you rather play between these two teams?
Yeah, I was back and forth on that question. I think I lean Miami just because you avoid the possibility of playing Texas A&M in Texas. I do think, even though Ohio State won that game, I thought playing Texas at the Cotton Bowl, it was a pretty split crowd. Like, I think Ohio State fans were represented pretty well, but you could hear, the Texas fans made their impact, especially where we were sitting in the press box. You kind of feel the impact of the Texas fans. I don't think you would necessarily deal with that element of it facing Miami. So in a conversation where I feel like the teams are kind of equal, and we'll get into that here in a second when we talk about this matchup, I feel like I'd rather take the team that doesn't have any semblance of a home field advantage.
Miami doesn't even show up to its own home games, let alone travel to Dallas, Texas in the middle of January, in the middle of December. Andrew, who would you rather play?
Yeah, Miami is the most NFL pro team in college football, like in that way. Like, they are, when they're good, the fans show up, and when they're not, they don't. And when it's time to travel, we're good. We don't need to leave Florida. It's cold everywhere else. So if I'm an Ohio State fan, I would rather play Miami. But I think it's maybe closer than I let on early. Like when I first saw this, I went, "Oh man, Ohio State fans should really want Miami. Carson Beck will simply screw it up, and
He
it'll be
will give you
fine."
the game. He will do
And
that.
like I get it, but then I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, like how many quarterbacks in the field like could you really look at? And we'll do this later in the week, but like how many quarterbacks in the field could you really look at and be like, Ohio State should be scared of this guy, right? Like Ohio State could probably make every single one of these quarterbacks screw it up. So the thing with Miami to me is Miami's ceiling is really high. Like Miami's upside, if they are on their game, and they have not been this year, and that's the thing. Like, do you remember they beat Notre Dame in the first week of the year, and then USF was kind of this fun story, and they pounded them into the ground, and then they beat Florida, and everybody went, it's going to be Ohio State, Miami in the Orange Bowl for the national championship layup. Everybody was just looking at that. But then they do this. They're just up and down, right? They're like a sound wave. So I think it's Miami. You look at A&M is actually, for as much as we talk about like Miami's defensive line, A&M gets after the quarterback more. They have more sacks this year than Miami does. I would be afraid of Marcel Reed in the way of, you kind of know what Carson Beck is. At least Marcel Reed can run. At least Marcel Reed can be explosive. He might not be up and down, or he might be up and down, but you're going to get that from Carson Beck anyway. So I think I would rather play Miami. It's avoiding whatever home field advantage would be at Jerry World on New Year's Eve would be good for Ohio State, but I think I would rather see the U on the helmet on New Year's Eve.
For the record, they have one more sack than Miami has.
Yeah, but it feels like we talk about Miami and we're like, Ruben Bain is Superman. And it feels like we don't really talk about anybody else on that A&M line like that. And it's like, well, obviously Miami's got the better line. It's like, well, actually A&M's got more sacks.
Yeah, one more sack.
Yeah, right. And I understand that, but what I'm saying is that it feels like the narrative, like it feels like if you wouldn't have known that, I feel like there are probably people watching this or listening to this that would just go, oh, it's Miami. They have Ruben Bain. That guy's awesome.
I'm still thinking. I think Miami's front seven is better than Texas A&M's front seven. Like from an individual, like
reasonable,
sure, like Texas A&M, like Mike Elko's a good coach, and they have a good coaching staff over there, and that's not taking away from Texas A&M and what they have been this year defensively. They're a good defense. I think Miami's front seven scares me more. And Buckeye Ryan 19, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I would rather play Miami than Texas. I would rather play Texas A&M rather than Miami, and it's because they've seen Marcel Reed already, and Ohio State has an answer for Marcel Reed already, and his name is Arvell Reese, and his name is Sonny Styles, and his name is Kenyatta Jackson, and his name is Caden Kirk. We have seen Ohio State against little quarterback who likes to scoot around and not stay in the pocket after his first read. And what they do with him? Cage in and let Arvell Reese just watch you. And as soon as you leave that pocket, number 8's coming to get you. Bryce Underwood learned that lesson. Damon Williams learned that lesson. Arch Manning learned that lesson. Quite frankly, Fernando Mendoza learned that lesson a couple times. He's just better than those guys, so it didn't rattle him for the rest of the game. But I would rather play Texas A&M because I think Ohio State's defense is set up to stop guys like Marcel Reed. I think Carson Beck, while you said it, Gillis, he wants you to have the game. He wants you to take it. When it's if there is a quarterback in this field who I can guarantee you right now, if you had to say, hey, there's a quarterback in this field who's going to throw a pick in every single playoff game he plays in, all of my money, my entire paycheck's going on Carson Beck.
Well,
he's gonna do it. He's gonna throw the pick. He's gonna make the mistake.
It's more than that, I think, though, because I think it's like first off, if you guys have ever seen that SpongeBob meme where Plankton's teaching SpongeBob how to be mean, he goes, "Now let him have it," and SpongeBob goes, "You can have it." It's literally just that, but it's not that Carson Beck. I think they played Louisville and he had a handful of picks, but it's not so much that he'll throw a pick. It's that he's like the Josh Fryer of quarterbacks, where it's like he's pretty good, and then at the worst time, he will find a time to just throw it right into a linebacker's chest.
But he'll
You're
do
like,
that.
wow, Josh Fryer's pretty solid, and maybe he gets a little bit more flack than he deserves. Oh wait, he just drilled a defensive back right between the numbers.
But even at the best times, he's gonna do it. He's gonna throw those picks. But I you know what? I'd have been with you guys. I'd have rather played Miami until Ohio State played Indiana. And Indiana's got some dudes on the defensive line, and that was the first time I saw Ohio State's offensive line rattled like that. I think Texas A&M is a very good defensive front. I think Miami has some dudes that the right side of Ohio State's offensive line, even outside of Tegra, hasn't always been great this back half of the season. And I think the Indiana game spooked me a little bit. And those guys are good. Ruben Bain's a first-round draft pick. And I don't like Ruben Bain on the right side of Ohio State's offensive line causing havoc. And now all of a sudden your starting quarterback, even with 13 games under his belt, is rattled. I just don't like that. So I'd rather play Texas A&M because I know they have answers for Marcel Reed and what he is as a quarterback. And Miami's defensive front, I have a tick more respect for, even if one has one literal more sack than the other team has. With that being said, Stefan, who do you think is going to win the actual football game?
Yeah, I've got Miami pulling it off on the road. I think this game is going to come down to the defensive fronts. We've, I think, done a good job of explaining that, so I don't need to go into too much detail. But I like Cassius Howell a lot. I think he's also a first-round pick. Ruben Bain is just a top 10 pick. I think because of Ruben Bain, we kind of forget about Akeem Mesidor with Miami. Yeah. Hopefully I pronounced that right, but he's been a force, another first-team all ACC guy. So I'm going with Miami just because in a matchup where both defensive fronts are really good and can get after the quarterback, I trust Miami's offensive line just a little bit more. Their pass blocking grades and things of that nature have been better than Texas A&M's. They're significantly better in run blocking. I do have a little bit of concern because Miami has played one team that ranks in the top 10 in terms of pass rush, and that was Louisville, and they got after Carson Beck, and Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions in that game, like Gillis mentioned. So it does concern me a little bit that maybe Miami's offensive line isn't quite as good as advertised, right? Because I think week 1 we saw them, dominate in the trenches against Notre Dame, and I think as the season progressed, it's like, okay, but that Notre Dame defensive front isn't quite what we've seen from Notre Dame in past years. I think it was wound up being still a decent unit, but it's not, it's not what you usually think of when you think of Notre Dame. And maybe that led to a belief that Miami's offensive line was maybe a bit more dominant than it is. But I do trust it enough. Buckeye Ryan is pointing out that I am once again in the category of Miami boys. So we'll see. We'll see if anyone joins me. I believe that Miami last year, that backfired. They're in the playoff this year, so they at least are making progress. But I will be a Miami boy at least for another 4 days at the time of recording. So give me Miami pulling off the upset on the road. Hopefully there's enough Miami fans there to chant SEC as the game goes final in College Station.
For what it's worth, Miami is tied for 8th in the country in sacks allowed per game. The Louisville game, I feel like for Miami was what the Indiana game was for Ohio State, where it was just out of character thing. I'm like, oh, you finally played somebody who really can get after you in some exotic ways, and you paid for it. But also, Carson Beck just giving the game away, just giving it. They literally took an interception off the table. He said, no. I need that interception. I need to have this.
I know what's going to happen too. Like it's going to be, what time is this game? Noon. It's going to be like 12:30 on Saturday. Beck's going to throw a pick, and I'm going to be like, what? Like, why did I pick Miami to win this game? Yeah. But here I am.
It's wonderful, man. Gillis, are you back? Are the Miami boys back in 2025?
So I just pulled this up. I actually had Miami and A&M in the playoff, and I had Marcel Reed as a Heisman candidate. Like, I would have felt really good about myself if Marcel Reed had made it to New York, because I feel like that would have been a nice little, hey, Andrew was not wrong or not right about most things before the year, but because I had Alabama winning the national championship as the number 2 seed. But I would have felt really good about it. I had Miami as the 7 and A&M as the 11. Yeah, I was on the Miami boys last year, and Steven gave Stefan and I a lot of guff for it, because I was on the U. I am now on A&M.
That was
I think
bad.
I
That was
think thank you.
bad.
Thank you. For those that are listening, I did like the horns down, but for the U version. Um I think A&M wins this game. Ohio State fans that are watching and listening to this, if you think Big Noon's bad, Texas A&M got 11 a.m. for a playoff game. So that's not great for them. They have to kick off at 11 a.m. local time
So did
in College
Miami.
Station to play Miami. Um, so that's obviously a tough one for them. And I think there's NFL games that day, so I think the College Football Playoff Committee and ESPN were probably like, we need to get these games away from the NFL so we can actually get people to watch the game that might be really good. Uh, I think, like we said, the line play is going to be really good. If you like offensive and defensive line play, like this might be the game is about blocking and tackling game of the first round. Like this is going to be a really, really interesting matchup. But something that I don't think we've talked about really a lot, or we haven't talked about it at all in this segment. I think Mike Elko is a better coach than Mario Cristobal. Like, we talk about Miami and Miami screwing it up late, and it's like, yeah, oh, Carson Beck might do something stupid. I don't know, man. Mario Cristobal might do something stupid. Like, it feels like Miami finds a way to lose these games that they shouldn't lose, and not just like, oh, they lose at Syracuse last year. Shout out producer Brennan. They lose at Syracuse last year, and it's like, hey, that screwed them out of the playoff. It's like, no, I remember that game, Georgia Tech or North Carolina or whatever, when they were running plays and they literally could have just kneeled it. Like the game management from Cristobal has not been good. You go back and look at some of their close games; they did not handle the Notre Dame game well. Like I trust Mike Elko, who I think is one of the best coaches in college football, more than I trust Mario Cristobal. You give me a home matchup with him in the college football playoff, yeah, I'm taking A&M.
I took A&M, but it's because I think Miami's going to lose this game more than Texas A&M wins it. If that makes sense. Like they're gonna. Gillis brought up all of those examples of the past year of those moments. I mean, he had those moments this year where it's just him and Sharon Moore, and this is a football conversation about Sharon Moore. They just aren't good at the things that head coaches need to be good at in terms of game management, and it's cost Miami some games, and I think it might cost them the game. I think Carson Beck might play a really good 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter comes around and he starts throwing picks, or they don't manage the clock well in a situation, or they don't manage time else well. But it's just something where you look back on this at the end of the day and you'll be like, Miami probably should have beaten Texas A&M, but they just did not. Their operation just wasn't as clean as it needed to be. Okay, we've talked about 2 teams and it's been 30 minutes, so we're gonna pick up a pace here. Tulane, Ole Miss. Stefan, any win for the G5?
Yeah, not this time. I'm going with Ole Miss. I think both situations are very intriguing because it's neither team has. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Ole Miss doesn't have their head coach. Tulane's head coach is also the head coach at Florida. So that's
Double duty.
If you think life is tough for Brian Hartline just to call plays, like imagine being the head coach of Tulane, trying to prepare your team for a game against an SEC team. It's tough. I really want to pick Tulane. I can't get myself to do it. In a world where both coaching staffs have me questioning things a little bit, I'm just going to go with the more talented team. Regarding the Trinidad Chambliss thing, I think you mentioned, I don't think it's in question if he's going to play in the playoff. I think he's just trying to get another year of eligibility, and if he does, then there's like a commercial going out there where he's like talking about being in the it's like it's like bingo of all the like college football things of just like trying to get a waiver, commercial in an NIL deal talking about the transfer portal. Like it's everything mixed into one. But I'm pretty sure Trinidad Chambliss is playing for Ole Miss as long as they are in the playoff this year, and then we'll see what happens next year. I think he'd be very ill advised to leave the playoff and go into the portal because if you don't get that year of eligibility, then you're just done playing college football, and you also chose not to play in the playoff. So yeah, I'm just both these teams seem to be a bit of a headache. I'm just going to take the more talented one. I'll take Ole Miss, and they also beat the crap out of Tulane earlier this year.
Gillis, any love for the G5?
One of these days, I think a G5 team might win, but it's not this one. Yeah, Ole Miss is going to win. It is funny to think about, like, if they had, like, if Boise State didn't do what they did last year, and people like in suits that are high up in the Big Ten and SEC didn't freak out, Tulane would have had a bye. Tulane would be the 4 seed and Ohio State would be the 5 seed. And which is just an insane world to think about. That Ohio, which, like, you start to think about, if you're an Ohio State fan, like, James Madison, Tulane, we're in the semis. It's probably not a bad path, even if you do have to play an extra game. But yeah, Ole Miss is going to win this one. I This one's interesting to me because, like you said, with all of the craziness with Tulane, or excuse me, with Ole Miss, I guess Tulane too, but specifically with Ole Miss, like, I'm interested to see what kind of crowd that's going to be. I'm fascinated by this game. I hope it's not one of those games where it's like, oh, this is just like, I know they literally played in like week 1 or 2, so I hope it's not one of those. Oh, this is just SEC versus G5, and this is going to be 45-10 and whatever. I hope we don't get that, but I do think Ole Miss might roll. Which, and again, like, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're probably looking at it going, why couldn't we have been the 3 seed? We would have had a better matchup facing Ole Miss or Tulane than A&M or Miami.
Hey, maybe you should have lost the game earlier this year, and you would have
allow more points. Maybe we should start that train. They should have allowed Indiana to score a touchdown on that last drive.
Yeah,
and maybe they'd be playing Ole Miss or Tulane in the semis. Or
sometimes you just got to scam the system. I also have Ole Miss winning that game. They're better. They're a better football team than them, and I am worried about a overcorrection to this as we move on to James Madison and Oregon. I am worried about it. Stefan, quick answer: yes or no? Oregon or is Oregon beating James Madison?
Yeah, we could talk more about Oregon in their next matchup.
Okay, cool. Gillis, yes or no? Oregon's beating James Madison
by a lot.
Okay, you can put my photo up there too, Brandon. I am worried about. Well, I don't know if I'm worried about it. You can already see the conversation happening in the national media space of, why are we including G5s in this conversation? Why are G5s getting into the field? And it's I think I agree with it. My stance is, if we're going to include them, then you have to include them. And those 2 G5 teams earn the right to be here. Now, if we want to live in a world where G5s go do their own thing, I think that is probably the wisest thing, because I am very worried about, as Gillis said, 45-10 games here, where it's just like, these 2 teams just don't belong on the field. They're getting whooped in the trenches, man. It's just not it. And I'm very interested to see what the reaction to that is going to be, because people already complained last year when we were giving teams first round buys who probably weren't good enough to get first round buys. How do you think they're going to feel when it feels like G5 teams got in over Notre Dame, got in over SEC schools, got in over ACC schools, got in over Big Ten schools? I'm interested in seeing what that reaction is going to look like. Okay, so on to the quarterfinals. We got Bama versus Indiana, Oregon versus Texas Tech, Georgia versus Ole Miss, and then Ohio State versus either Miami or Texas A&M. One of us picked Miami. The other 2 picked Texas A&M. So let's start with that Ohio State versus Miami game for you, Stefan.
Yeah.
Who is your winner of that game? And just kind of describe how you think the game will play out.
Yeah, I've got Ohio State winning this game. If you guys remember going into the Big Ten championship, I picked Ohio State to win 27-17, and I kind of said that maybe this is a bit of a defensive battle at first. Ohio State kind of pieces some things together, and they get a touchdown or 2 late and really kind of pull away. This could be similar to what I predicted, just in the sense, though, that Ohio State maybe pulls away a bit earlier, right? Because I do think Ruben Bain and Akeem Estador, those guys on Miami's defensive front, can challenge some things for Ohio State early on, right? In ways that Indiana did as well. I just trust Ohio State over the course of time to be able to pull away from this team because I just don't think Miami has the firepower to match up or to firepower in its defense to kind of do what Indiana did for 60 minutes. I also think Ohio State with 30 days to prepare is maybe looking a bit different in terms of what their offensive approach is and what their philosophy in the red zone is. I am cautiously optimistic that Ohio State will change up its red zone approach. Now we'll see, right? Because I think we've said that a lot this season, and it hasn't necessarily come to fruition. But I just there's two. At the end of the day, quarterback is such an important position. I think these defenses will go back and forth for a little bit. At some point, one of these quarterbacks is going to make a mistake, and I am very confident that that quarterback will be Carson Beck and not Julian Sayin. Ohio State will take advantage of some of those mistakes and really pull away late. So this could be like 14-7 at halftime or something like that. And Ohio State winds up winning like 35-14. So I'm pretty confident in the Buckeyes here against Miami. I'll take Ohio State.
Your win is very much a like eventually the more talented team, the more depth of talent takes over type of win, which is, I mean, that's a college football recipe, right? That's the tale as old as time there. Gillis,
can I ask a question real quick? I don't think it's something we can ignore. I know last year the teams that got the bye, two of them were Arizona State and Boise State. Is there a part of you, and maybe because Miami's defense is so good, I do think about this a little bit. Is there part of you that worries it's a little bit sluggish and a bit of a feeling out period for Ohio State after 3.5 weeks off?
Won't be shocked if the first quarter is a little weird. I also think I'm ready to be wrong if I'm wrong. I'm leaning into the idea of part of the reason it went the way it went is because of who had the buys more than it was because that they had buys. The Oregon and Ohio State one obviously throws off the math a little bit because Oregon had been the best team in the country all year. They were undefeated, and Ohio State came in there and whooped them. But also that plays into it. Oregon should not have been playing Ohio State first. So does it change whether or not Oregon loses? What was like score 42-21 or something like that?
41-20.
Yeah, I don't know if it changes it. They probably still get mollywopped, but it happens in a semifinal or a championship game versus it's the first thing Oregon has to see. I don't think that Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech are all going to lose their first playoff games this year because they are better than the four teams, which were what? Oregon,
Georgia,
Boise State, Arizona State.
Boise State. Yeah, they're better than those teams. Like the only comparisons, Indiana and Oregon are probably on par, but all the other teams are not necessarily on par.
Yeah, because even last year, like Georgia lost to Notre Dame after having the bye. Georgia also didn't have its starting quarterback in that game.
Like
there's caveats kind of to all four of those games.
Yeah, so like granted, if it happens again this year, then I think we're going to start having intriguing conversations about whether or not it's worth having the bye. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Gillis, A&M or Ohio State?
Yeah, it's Ohio State. I think this is like you just talked about. It is an interesting dynamic of the layover. Like I think what I don't want to do is just lean all the way into this idea of Ryan Day has 3 weeks to prepare. He could beat the Green Bay Packers this week, or sorry, Stefan, the team up north. He could beat anybody this week, right? Like he's got 3 weeks. It's fine. Because I do want to leave open that possibility of you haven't played football in a few weeks. You are now playing a team, and it's not just that you haven't played football. It's that you are like you got to think about the mental state and the physical state of A&M coming off of that game, right? Like A&M and Miami, I think the winner of that game, it's very possible that the winner just gets on a roll. And I think it depends how it goes.
Yes.
Because part of that last year, Steven mentioned that it was the teams more so than anything that had the buys and the teams that didn't. And that's maybe one of the reasons why. I think that's totally fair. I think it's also the fact that you look at all of those games and none of them were close. Ohio State rolled against Tennessee. Notre Dame rolled against Indiana. who else played in the first round? Texas rolled. And like I know that game was close, but like there were games where it was like the team I'll say this, the teams that made it to the national championship game dominated their first round opponent. And you start to wonder, like, if A&M and Miami are in a war, does that hurt them? Like, if that's a 4-quarter knockdown, drag out, 24-21 game that's just between the trenches, just fist fight, just slobber knocking football, and then you got to go play Ohio State, does that help them or does that hurt them? I don't know the answer to that. So I'm willing to leave open the possibility that, like, forget weird, annoying maybe for a half or 3 quarters. I do think Ohio State would pull away, but the idea of A&M winning that game in my scenario, which is what I think is going to happen, or I guess even Miami, and feeling their way out and saying, "Hey, we're confident." Like the Miami side of things, they probably thought they were dead at this point a week and a half ago, and now they have life, and now they go on the road and they beat an A&M team that was 11-1. They're feeling really good going into the like. I want to leave open that possibility. So I think Ohio State wins, but I'm not gonna lean. And I think I saw look ahead lines. I think it was A&M would be 7.5-point dogs. Miami would be 9.5-point dogs against Ohio State. I don't know. Feels about right because I would see these games ending, 24-14 because like I don't think either one of these offenses is scoring on Ohio State that much. But I think Ohio State might have to trudge through this one.
If one of these teams wins by 3 scores, I'll say that. I'm not going to say that. I mean, I think this is going to be a 4-quarter football game. That's the thing. Ohio State wasn't a 4-quarter football game. They were playing their 3rd string quarter. Julian Sand threw a pass in a college football playoff game last year, and he was the 3rd string quarterback. Is A&M or Miami's 3rd string quarterback throwing a pass on Saturday afternoon? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. We probably couldn't even predict that Julian Sand would have been throwing a pass last year. That was incredible what Ohio State did last year. I think Ohio State's going to win the football game. I'm going to save this point for later on because I just don't want to waste it on Texas A&M and Miami. I'm actually I wish one of us would have picked the other team, knowing that now we've picked different teams, because I want to see how Brennan would do the faces when he's got to split it up in between 2 different people. But that's just because I'm OCD. Okay, we can move on to Texas Tech and Oregon.
I am going with the Red Raiders to pull it off. I like this Texas Tech team a lot. And Texas Tech's defensive front, led by David Bailey, scares me a little bit, seeing what Indiana's defensive front was able to do against Oregon, Oregon's offensive line, and Dante Moore. It went from, Dante Moore is this quick, shifty, really exciting quarterback to, maybe he should have gotten rid of the ball a little bit quicker instead of trying to make too much happen. I think Dante Moore is an awesome quarterback, but I'm just not quite there yet with this Oregon team. Right, because they started rolling after that Indiana game a bit, and they had that, that was a really good win at Iowa. I think when you play at Kinnick, you kind of have to play Iowa's game, and Oregon being able to win like that impressed me a bit, but it wasn't too convincing against Wisconsin. Washington didn't end up exactly being the team that I thought they might be. I'm just not 100% there yet with Oregon. I think if they beat Texas Tech, I would not be surprised if this Oregon team then beat Indiana and made the national championship game and made some noise. I'm just not quite there yet with them. So I'm going with Texas Tech. This Texas Tech defense is so intriguing to me. I didn't even mention Jacob Rodriguez and what he's able to do. So I'm going with the Red Raiders.
So we play this game that I don't think you guys know about anytime we're on road trips, and it's called Scammer or Fraud. And it typically applies to coaches, and it's just a way to talk about football. It's a stupid way to talk about football. I think Oregon as a team this year, I think we should put them on that scale right now. Are they a scammer or a fraud?
I think they're on fraud watch.
Okay. Gillis, I know this is hurting your heart. Should they be on fraud or scammer watch?
I don't think either.
Okay. What about Texas Tech?
I'm putting them on scam watch because they actually have
Yeah.
big wins against BYU on their resume, and I'm
Yeah.
worried that that's selling something that's not actually there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Shocker. Gillis can put Texas Tech on the scale, but he can't put good old buddy Dan Lanning on the scale. I think this is going to be a very, very fun and interesting matchup should it come to pass in the Orange Bowl, because I think both of these teams are very, very good football teams. I don't think either of these teams has ever had to actually prove that they are a very, very good football team. Because Oregon lost by 10 at home to Indiana, who come to find out they're the best team in the country. So it kind of, you lost at home by 10 and you probably should have lost by more. But with the full picture, you add the caveat that this is the best team in college football. So I don't know, are we as harsh on that win, on that loss, as we were when it happened on September 27th? Probably not, right? Because it's like, oh, you lost. Okay, everybody's losing to Indiana, whatever. And you just said it, Stefan. Texas Tech has looked very, very dominant against the Big 12.
Yep.
And we're not sure what to do with that. So I think every type of game is on the table. I think a low scoring, close game is on the table. I think a high scoring, close game is on the table. I think Oregon winning by 3 scores is on the table. I think Texas Tech winning by 3 scores is on the table. I think everything is on the table. I just think Dante Moore might be a dude. And it's like time for him to grow up, man. And I mean, he just hasn't. I thought he had a really good game against Penn State. Unfortunately, just like how I don't think I'm holding the Indiana loss against them, you can't credit them with the Penn State win anymore because Penn State's trash. But I think Dante might be a dude, and is Texas Tech good if they can't turn you over? And he doesn't really turn the ball over. He has 6 interceptions on the season. So if Dante Moore is a dude and he doesn't turn the ball over, and I think Texas Tech is a beneficiary of bad conference, and they are a step above everybody in the bad conference. I went with Oregon. Andrew, are you joining me?
I am.
Hey, I knew it. I knew he was going to be that way. I just knew it. I just knew he can't go against Dan. He can't do it.
I think one of the things that's interesting with Texas Tech is, like, I said this in the car on the way back from the Big Ten championship game. Like, there's a difference between spending money and there's a difference between spending money well. Like, Texas Tech.
Oh my God, this is the game of the guys who spend all the money.
Yeah, and like Texas Tech has gotten themselves to the number 4 spot because they've spent it well. Like, they have elevated themselves because they've used that oil money to get them to, the number 4 seed in the college football playoff, right? Like, they're 12-1. They've dominated everybody that they've played, and I think their one loss, if I'm not mistaken, Morton, their quarterback, was not in the game when they lost to Arizona State. So Texas Tech is very good. So Texas Tech not only has spent their money well, they have tapped into the oil well, literally, to get the money, and they have figured out really good players, and they have also built in the trenches. Got a lot of big boys on that team that can play some football. Like Stefan mentioned, David Bailey and Rodriguez at linebacker. Like, he was 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting. Like they are really good. But I think when it comes down to it, Oregon is getting healthier. DeCorian Moore hasn't played since late October. He's practicing this week. I think their time off. I remember I saw Oregon fans talking before the Ohio State-Michigan game and everything, going, let's just take care of our business and hope Ohio State wins, because I don't want to have to play in a Big Ten championship game, because then we might get more hurt. Like, we need to get healthy. And I think this time off is going to be beneficial for them. I think, especially playing a JMU team, they're favored by 21 points. I think it might even be up to 21.5 now. Like, that matchup is going to be very, very nice for them. I think easing their way into this. I take Oregon. I think Texas Tech has had a great season, but I mentioned it with Miami and ceiling. I think Oregon's ceiling, I think Miami fluctuates more. I think Oregon's ceiling pulls them out, gets them a win over Texas Tech.
This would be a big win for Texas Tech in terms of can they be the Clemson of the Big 12, essentially, going forward.
Be a big win for the Big 12. Like, forget Texas Tech.
I mean,
well, see that's I was just going to make that Clemson point too, because there is, it feels like there's two routes Texas Tech can go. Will you be what Oklahoma was in the Big 12 with Lincoln Riley, where it's like you dominate that conference and then you get on the big stage, it's like, you're just the best team in a bad conference? Or will you be Clemson, where you go through the ACC and you're like, you're the best team from a iffy conference, but you're actually legit and national title good? And I think this is a big chance for Texas Tech to make a statement. I think it is a chance for the Big 12 to make a bit of a statement, just because Arizona showed you last year that they can compete on the field with Texas. BYU, I think, felt like they maybe had more of a playoff case than they got. I don't think they should have been in, but they probably should have been talked about more than they were, to be quite honest. So I think it could be beneficial for the Big 12, and who knows? Maybe Texas Tech gets to the championship game in my bracket.
Yeah, that's one. If Texas Tech loses and Oregon like kicks their butt, scammer. If they lose a close game, whether it's a defensive game or an offensive game, we're gonna be like, okay, there's something building over there. If they win, it's like, okay, something's building over there, and we're gonna be looking at Oregon sideways. If they win big, we're gonna go, the Big 12 stinks, but Texas Tech is the exception to the rule. The same way we looked at Clemson. The ACC stinks, but Clemson is the exception to that rule. And we're going to be looking at Oregon sideways.
There's some tough tough, honest conversations on Buckeye Talk. Maybe we'll have Jimmy come on for that one.
We're going to have our own team meeting where we're going to put Gillis and Jimmy at the front, and we're just going to have real tough and honest conversations about the people you decide to align with. You keep aligning with losers. I don't like that for you. And he's not a loser. He's got a Big Ten championship game. Okay. I think Indiana is up next. Yeah, Indiana, Alabama. Stefan, you gonna be a homer?
Yeah, I will be a homer. I'll take Indiana. I'll be a Big Ten homer more than even an Indiana homer. I don't think this Bama team is good. I think if your offense is one-dimensional, that's not a good matchup for you to play against this Indiana defense. I am worried about Indiana's defense losing Stephen Daly. I think he's obviously an awesome player, right? I think he has like 19 tackles for loss this year or something like that. He's outstanding. I think there's maybe a bit of an overreaction to that, because I think Ohio State's defense coordinator Brian Haynes is still really good. I think that defense is really good and can still be, you're still some of your parts at the end of the day. So losing Daly is obviously a big thing, but I don't, even without Daly, I don't trust this Alabama team to be able to move the ball well against Indiana. And I think Indiana can have some success moving the ball against this Alabama defense. I'm not overly enthused by what Alabama does defensively. So yeah, I'll take Indiana winning in the Rose Bowl.
Gillis.
Who's yours? Indiana wins. I think Indiana looked at the bracket being revealed, and this is not an Indiana is soft point. This is, I think, when they were watching the bracket get revealed and they saw, hey, we're the number 1 seed. We knew it, blah, 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 yay. And they saw the 8 seed come up as Oklahoma, and they saw the 9 seed come up as Bama and not Notre Dame or Miami. I think they probably should have been really happy, because I don't think either one of those teams could have beat them. I think Notre Dame or Miami could have beaten Indiana. I don't think Alabama. I would have picked Indiana to beat Miami or Notre Dame, but I think it would have been a much tougher game. I think Oklahoma or Alabama would be in trouble. I think Kurt Signetti is a better coach than Kalen DeBoer. And a lot of that is what it comes down to, right? Like, I would rather have Kurt Signetti in a game like this coaching against Kalen DeBoer. Alabama can't run the ball. I think Indiana is exactly the type of team to take advantage of a massive, kind of win like that, rather than let it be a setback and a massive, hey, like the last week of Indiana football, they just finished an undefeated season, and they won the Big Ten, and Fernando Mendoza, their starting quarterback, won the Heisman Trophy. That's insane. And I think there are some teams to where you could look at it and say, this could be a problem. I don't think it's going to be a problem for Indiana. I think Cignetti will have them boys ready to play. I think they go to the Rose Bowl. I think they win Indiana over Alabama.
I'm very happy that Oklahoma or Alabama who they're playing next in the Rose Bowl. Because I'm all, you know me, I'm all about the vibes and the narratives and things like that. On October 17th, I tweeted, Ohio State and Indiana are in a class of their own. And there was a mix of people who, someone named Farrell Huser told me he loved me. Indiana fans love me, man. Seriously. And they love me. I think they like me more than Stefan.
We saw again. You keep saying that. I don't think that's entirely true, but we did have a moment in the press box at Lucas Oil where one of the Indiana writers was talking to me, and Steven walked by, and I introduced him, and he was like, "Oh, you're that Steven Means, the Indiana believer."
So, yeah. I always say that because I know it irritates Stefan when I say that because like, it's not true at all. I know, but that's not the point. It's about the narratives. I think it would be a great way to punctuate home the statement, stop looking at helmets and watch football games. If Indiana in the Rose Bowl smacks around another blue blood who is overrated, and that's both of these teams, overrated. I picked Indiana as well. Ohio State, great win for Indiana. Ohio State's not overrated. Oregon, great win for Indiana. Oregon's not overrated. This is the first time it feels like that concept of people can't wrap their minds around the fact that Indiana is good at football now. And it's because they're not traditionally good and they don't have the helmet and the logo. Okay, they're getting ready to get on the field with the logo and they're going to smack them around in the Rose Bowl. Stop looking at logos and watch football games. Georgia, Ole Miss. I feel like this, if Lane Kiffin wasn't Lane Kiffin, I feel like this would be a fun game.
Yeah, it was like 43-35 when they played each other earlier this year.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a good way to close out the quarterfinal games. It's an 8 p.m. kickoff in the Sugar Bowl. I think it'd be a fun game to watch. But instead, Lane Kiffin is at LSU now. And Stefan, I don't know. Like, do you think this is going to be a close matchup?
No, 43-35 is I think that's what the final score was when Georgia beat Ole Miss earlier this year. That was points scored by Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin calling plays. I don't trust Charlie Weiss Jr. to be able to do that as well. So yeah, I'm taking Georgia here. Kind of, good storyline of Ole Miss going to Louisiana to play this game and in the Sugar Bowl. And I'm sure Lane Kiffin will find a way to end up in the stadium or something like that and have some obnoxious, annoying tweets and act childish like he always does. But I'm taking Georgia to win this game.
Gillis, did Georgia get the easiest path to the Final Four?
I think so. Like that's why I said kind of all along, like if you're Ohio State, you probably wish you were the 3 seed. Like, how would we be talking about this game if Ohio State was the 3 seed? And I don't know how that would have changed the venues or whatever, because I know Georgia's at the Sugar Bowl, but like
they'd have been going. I think that had just been going to the Sugar Bowl.
Sure, wherever they would have played them, I think you would have rather played Ole Miss without a head coach. I think you would have rather, because like it's one thing to pull it together and get everybody on board and hip hip hooray, let's win one for the Gipper and let's beat Tulane and we won a home playoff game. Then you got to do it again, and then you got dudes who are like looking at other jobs and like how, like didn't I see like a bunch of staffers that are going to LSU with Kiffin are coming back to Ole Miss to coach in the playoff, and like everybody's talking about Charlie Weiss Jr. like calling plays, like, oh well, it's keeping the same. He didn't call plays this year,
right?
Like there's just a lot going on with Ole Miss, so yeah, like it's Georgia. I think Georgia had the better path. I think Georgia's gotten better through the course of the year. Like you go back and look, like September 13th, they won by 3 on the road at Tennessee in overtime. They lost to Bama 2 weeks later after a bye at home. They beat Auburn on the road. Like Auburn was like one of those like sneaky, annoying, non-bowl eligible teams where it was like, man, they kind of just gave teams that were decent. They gave them.
He's doing the SEC thing, Steven.
No, I'm not.
You just
but-
mentioned Tennessee, Alabama, and
No, but
Auburn.
He's been doing it a little. He's been sprinkling it a little bit
Hang
throughout.
on.
So far.
So,
I'm gonna let him
like,
rock though.
Georgia should have maybe lost that game. Like,
Should have definitely lost that game.
Auburn went up 10-0, and then I think there was a play where Georgia had like a 99-yard fumble return or 90 something happened at the goal line with
Auburn. It should have been a touchdown for Auburn. It got overturned.
Yeah, and like
Coulda,
it launched
woulda.
a literal SEC investigation. Like Georgia maybe should have lost that game, but I think Georgia did find their footing in the last month. They beat Texas by 25, and I know they pulled away later in that game, but like you could also say Texas was finding their footing later in the year. Like Georgia won that game by 25. They beat Charlotte and SoCon Saturday. Who cares? They beat Georgia Tech, a rivalry game. They beat Alabama by 21, and I know Alabama's leaking oil right now, but they still like Alabama had 3 less rushing yards than us 3 did in the SEC championship game. That's impressive. I don't care. Like, I don't care who it is. I don't care if you're going to sit here and say the SEC's mid is you know what or whatever. Holding somebody to -3 rushing yards in a football game is still impressive. So I think Georgia's like not only got the easiest path, I think they might be finding their footing a little bit. So give me the dogs.
I took Georgia too. Okay, let's recap this.
Yeah.
It's fun. It took me a second to realize the reason why there's 3, 3, and 3 is because we don't all have the same thing. I'm a little slow sometimes. It takes me a minute to catch on to things, but that's what we have. We all have Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia getting to the Final Four, and then 2 of us have Oregon, and 1 of us has Texas.
Are you guys proud? Are you guys proud of your chalk bracket so far? That's really cool.
I feel it, yeah. Have you guys ever like fill out your March Madness brackets and you're like, this one's gonna hit, and then you get to the end of the line and you see in your Final Four 1, 2, 1, and you're like, God.
Well, I mean, technically speaking, Stefan, you're the only one here who picked all 4 of the top 4 seeds to be in the.
Are you proud of your chalk bracket, Stefan?
No, we know that betting odds determine the favorites, not the with that.
All right, Ohio State, Georgia. I think this is the more. Well, actually, I think both of these are fun. Last time these 2 teams played, they played in the Peach Bowl in 2022. Georgia won 42-41, a game that came down to a 50-yard field goal that Noah Ruggles was never going to make. I pray to the man above that this game does not come down to any field goals. And this is where I want to have a short conversation about something you said earlier, Stefan, that I wanted to bring up here once I realized we were all going to have Georgia and Ohio State playing in the semifinal. This is not just a red zone conversation. I think this is a offensive approach conversation throughout. Ohio State has a 13-game sample size now of how they've approached offense. And regardless of, I'm not going to throw a bunch of stats at you and do all these other different things. Just we've all watched them all year fiddle around with what I feel like is fighting against their nature with a lot of the heavy sets. And we've joked about it. Again, Gillis hates the fullback situation. Stefan, you hate how every time they get in the red zone, they go 13, 14 personnel. I hate the fact that they're running I formation from the 45-yard line. We've all the jokes have been said. Ryan Day is going to be taking over a little bit more than he was during the regular season. And also they have a 13-game sample size and 3 weeks to get ready for this football game. This team is built to go 11 personnel. I don't know. Are you open to the idea of, and I know we have to see it to believe it, but they said it after the Purdue game. We see what you guys see. So now that you've gotten through the Big Ten schedule, you're playing indoors. Guys will be a lot healthier because they'll be gotten off their feet for a couple of weeks. What if Ohio State just, and I'm not saying they're going to turn into a supernova team here. I think Georgia is still a good football team, and this is going to be a heavyweight battle. But just kind of screw it with all the heavy personnel, multi-tight end packages, and the heaviest we see them go is 12 personnel. And other than that, they're at 11. And they're just like, let's go. Like, our best players are Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Max Clare, and Will Kazmarek, and then Bo Jackson running behind an offensive line. And that's what we're doing. We're not throwing out 7 tight ends anymore because we did it for 13 weeks. And while it didn't kill our season, the return on investment was not what we thought it would be in fall camp.
You're asking if I would be surprised if they went back to that?
I'm asking, are you expecting to see more 11 and 12
I think
personnel
so.
and less 13, 14 personnel?
Yeah, I think so. And I kind of hope so. I think a lot of people watching and listening and texting 614-350-3315 also hope so. The period that they've had between the Big Ten championship game and the Cotton Bowl, and then obviously now we're talking about the Fiesta Bowl here. It was an opportunity, I think, for Ryan Day and the staff to really step back and reevaluate things, both with Brian Hartline in Columbus and with Brian Hartline not in Columbus. I think that Ryan Day could go very football mode. We know that. I think it's also a great opportunity. We know that the players have been off their feet now for about a week and a half or whatever it is at this point.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're not necessarily going full go quite yet this week either. I think there is an element to this that's important to have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate resting and healing up and looking like the part. I'm not saying, because even when they were healthy, Ohio State was running the heavy personnel packages.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe emphasized it a bit more of like, hey, let's lean on this and not necessarily lean on those guys in games that are technically inconsequential. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm giving Ohio State too much of a benefit of the doubt there. But I do think we see them lean more on 11 and 12 personnel as opposed to 13 and 14, which is why I have Ohio State winning this game. I just think that the weapons are too good on the outside for Ohio State to not lean on them in this setting. I mean, it's Arizona. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they open the roof.
They don't.
They don't. So
their grass is a little weird though because they grow it outside and bring it inside.
Yeah, that was the like Super Bowl. That was a disaster. The Eagles and the Chiefs the first time around.
Yeah.
But I trust Ohio State to lean on its fastball here, and I think if it does, it's got opportunities to beat Georgia and this Georgia defense, because we talked about that Ole Miss game earlier. Like Ole Miss was able to move the ball a little bit on them. Like the best games that just Georgia defense has had is like Alabama team that's one dimensional. You just talked about negative rushing yards. And a Texas team that, sure, Arch had his moments later in the season, and I'm sure he's going to be one of the Heisman favorites going into next season. We can't pretend like that Texas offense has been a juggernaut this season, right? We know it hasn't been, right? So, like, Auburn, not a good offense. Like, some of their best moments defensively have not come against the best offenses. I think Ohio State can maybe poke some holes in this Georgia defense. It feels like Georgia has become a little bit of a trendy pick nationally because – and I don't really understand why, because like Indiana's also a hot team, like Oregon's also a hot team, but they're like
logo.
When a team wins their conference tournament in March Madness, and they like Michigan last year, and granted Michigan last year, like they ended up making the Elite Eight or whatever it was, so like props to them. But like you win your conference tournament, it's like, oh, that team's hot, and it's like, okay, yeah, but they just had like 5 days off, and now it's kind of neutral court and everything's equal again. Like it doesn't matter what they did last week in the Big Ten tournament. So I feel like Georgia's kind of starting to fit into that category because they've separated themselves from what I think is not a good SEC, and they've become kind of a trendy pick. But I think Ohio State might win this game by a couple scores.
I think Georgia has become the SEC's last hope to win a national title this year. In a world where, I mean, Gillis and I have 3 Big Ten teams in our Final Four. Mm-hmm. And Stefan, you have 2 Big Ten teams and a Big 12 team. Like this is kind of the SEC's been this year. And if it feels like Georgia is leaving the behind and starting to at least flirt with the idea of being elite, and they're getting hot at the right time, which I do think plays a role into this. Ohio State was one of the best teams in the country last year. They also got hot. That does matter. Who has the Ohio State recipe? Maybe Georgia, I guess. And they don't have to play a first-round game, but also, I mean, it's ESPN. Who else are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about the SEC. Gillis, pick a winner.
Well, just real quick on what you were saying, it is very interesting that we have that, but like, just real quick before I talk about this game. Do you guys think that Georgia could win a national championship?
Sure.
Yeah. I think if they beat Ohio State, they can win a national championship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think Ole Miss can win a
No.
national championship?
No.
Oklahoma,
No.
Alabama,
Nope.
Texas A&M.
Please.
Right. So that it is crazy that we just went Ole Miss, no, Oklahoma, no, Alabama, no, A&M, no. There's 5 SEC teams in this 12-team field, and I think maybe we look like horses' butts in a few weeks because Alabama's hoisting the trophy or something. But like, I kind of think we're on the right track here. I kind of think that we're looking at it going like this is. I think Steven's right. This is kind of the SEC's last hope. This is, you know what that G stands for, guys, on the screen that we're looking at? It stands for Green Goblin Mask, because this is the game that Ryan Day and that staff are going to have to avoid everything that plagues them. Georgia's rush defense in terms of yards per game, they are 4th in the country right now. They are 7th in terms of yards per carry. In terms of red zone, in terms of like score percentage, they are 7th in the country. Georgia doesn't allow much when they get to the red zone. Their pass defense, in terms of yards per play, tied for 33rd. Like, there's is 33rd bad? Not necessarily, but there's a very clear difference between their run game and their pass game. If Ohio State can avoid that, I think Ohio State will beat them. And then you get to the Gunnar Stockton of it all. And I think Gunnar Stockton is a swell quarterback for Georgia. And he's probably a really nice guy. And I wish nothing but the best for him. And I don't know how he scores 14 points on this defense. I look at this game and see, like, even if Georgia's defense is like, you know what, we only need to rush 3 or 4 because our big boys will handle theirs and we can stop the run, and let's just put 7 back every single snap, and Julian's confused and Julian's seeing a lot. Like, even if that happens, I think Ohio State still wins this game because of that. So Ohio State beats Georgia. I kind of think it might be by multiple scores too. I don't look at this Georgia team as like 2022 Georgia, and you shouldn't. So I think Ohio State might roll.
I've learned my lesson with Ohio State blowing out really good teams this year, because I thought Indiana was a year away from having the talent to keep up through a 16-minute football game, and I was wrong about that. And so kudos to you, Indiana. I've never have any problem admitting if I was wrong or not. It's just, that's what I thought at the moment. I ended up being wrong. Indiana does have the horses this year to keep up with Ohio State. In fact, can sustain long enough to win a football game. I know Georgia has the horses to keep up. I understand this is not 2022 Georgia. Yeah, but Ohio State doesn't have 2022 CJ Stroud either. They've got 2021 version of CJ Stroud and Julian Sand, except Ryan Day and Brian Hartline have refused to just let him loose on the world. So that's my biggest hope for the playoff, is that Ryan Day was talking really highly about Julian Sand at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, and all that stuff is great, but like, we know that. Everybody who heard that knew that already. It's the people in the room who are putting together a game plan who need to know that. I mean, Stefan, we thought this by the end of the first quarter of the Texas game. I was like, okay, this kid's ready to do this. Yeah. Whenever they're ready to let him do it. And here we are 2.5 months later. We're still waiting for them to let him do it. Let him do it. Like, because even that Georgia game 2022, that was the first time where, like, Ryan Day, how many people left that Georgia game going, wow, I didn't realize CJ Stroud could run. And now you watch him with the Houston Texans the last 3 years. How many times has he scrambled to buy time and then made a throw while running to his right? And it's like, oh, it's just the Georgia game all over again. And we kept saying, yes, he is not running, not because he can't run or doesn't want to run. That is a directive from the top down. And it feels like the same thing is going on here, where I feel like Julian Sand just finished 4th in the Heisman Trophy voting while playing with one arm behind his back in terms of approach. So if you let Julian loose with a healthy Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, I don't think anybody in the country has an answer for that, especially now that Bo Jackson has turned into an explosive running back for you. With that being said, Georgia has a very good defensive front. Georgia recruits like Ohio State recruits. Gunnar Stockton, yeah, he's not as good of a quarterback as what Julian Sand is. Stetson Bennett wasn't as good of a quarterback as CJ Stroud was, and he kept up in that game.
Yeah,
because he's got the horses around him. So if Day's going to let loose and let Julian Sand and these weapons do what we all think they could do, I think Ohio State can beat Georgia. If he does it, I think he opens the door for Georgia to somehow pull off a win. I think Ohio State is better than Georgia. I don't think Ohio State is so much more talented than Georgia that we can go, well, unless Georgia's going to score 21 points, they can't win the football game, because Indiana didn't score 21 points and they won the football game. So it's on Day in this coaching staff what they want to do when it comes to this Georgia game. If it plays out this way and we're sitting in Phoenix, sitting in Glendale, Arizona, watching this game, I think it's up to the coaching plan and the game plan whether or not they beat Georgia or not, or if they let Georgia hang around and they're at the 37-yard line and they need Jaden Fielding to make a kick he has proven over and over again he cannot make. Other semifinal, we got Indiana versus Oregon or Indiana versus Texas Tech. Stefan, you up first with your chalk of a bracket. Go ahead and chalk again. Go ahead and
crazy spin zone happening right here. I'm gonna stick with Indiana on this one. For all the reasons that I mentioned, Texas Tech beating Oregon, I think Texas Tech can make this interesting with Indiana. Mm-hmm. I think that in the same way that Ohio State was able to get after Fernando Mendoza a bit, I think Texas Tech can do those things. I have questions about what Texas Tech's offense can do against this Indiana defense. And again, I'm opting on the side of I think Indiana's defense is a greater sum of its parts than it is just the result of Stephen Daly being injured and going out. So I'll take the Big Ten champs to beat the Big 12 champs here.
Gillis.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think Oregon's going to beat Indiana. I have Oregon.
My alma mater against Andrew's alma mater.
I think Oregon goes to the national championship game.
What a shocker.
It's hard to beat a team twice. I think first off, I think you have to value that at something. And I wonder if we look at it like I think this is what's going to happen. I think we are going to get to Miami and it's going to be Oregon and Ohio State. And we're going to be looking at this matchup going, Ohio State, we always kind of knew. Maybe we should have been paying attention to Oregon because, like, Steven said this like right after the Big Ten championship game. He goes, Oregon was he said he thought Oregon was the second best team in college football last year. They went 13-1, and this year they went 11-1. And in my bracket, they would have beaten JMU, so whatever, and then they would have beaten Texas Tech. And like, they've lost 2 games in the last 2 years, both to the number 1 team in the country at one point in time. And like, it wasn't like a Texas is the number 1 team in the country at one point in time and they fell off, or Penn State. Like, this is like, hey, they lost to an Ohio State team that was dominant, that won the national championship 2.5 weeks later. And then they lost to Indiana, who about a month and a half after they played that game, finished a 13-0 regular season and won the Big Ten. Dante Moore, I know Fernando Mendoza did throw a pick in that game that I think got returned for a touchdown. Dante Moore also threw 2 picks in that game. It's just like, I don't know. Oregon's got a young receiving core. I think the explosiveness is gonna help them in a game like this. And I have this feeling that it's not gonna be chalk. I have this feeling that it's not going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in the semis and 1 and 2 in the championship game and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the court. Like, I got this hunch that I think it's going to be Oregon. So I think Oregon goes to the national championship.
Elite spin zone.
That hunch and feeling he has going on, they call that fandom.
I will say, like, I know a lot of our listeners. I know you guys would fill out brackets all the time. Like we do this stuff. I think if it was Indiana, Oregon, I might pick Oregon to win. But I think Texas Tech is going to beat Oregon. Like you understand what I'm saying? Like sometimes you just kind of look at these matchups and you're like, I think this team could beat this team, but they're not going to play each other.
So Joe Clyde said something on some podcast he does weekly, and I've been thinking about it. Like this is not like the NCAA tournament in basketball.
Yeah.
Where like upsets just happen. And it's one of the fundamental differences between football and basketball is sometimes in basketball it's just you got hot and you started making a barrage of threes that you typically don't make. It's like, okay, like why'd you win? I don't know. They shot 60% from three and they shot 37% on the season, and we had a bad shooting night. That doesn't happen in football nearly as often.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I don't even know what the equivalent is. Like the team who's better typically wins the football game, and if not, it's because they were fundamentally better in an area that exploited whatever the team they beat was bad at. So, to use Ohio State's recent upset losses as an example, Oregon in 2021, they had a bad defensive coordinator. Ohio State did, who didn't know how to make in-game adjustments. Oregon was able to take advantage of that, and they just kind of just poked at it for 60 minutes. Purdue in 2018, Ohio State's could not, like, they just gave up explosive plays. And what happened? Rondell Moore. They couldn't cover, and they gave up explosive plays. That's what happened there. Iowa took advantage of the fact that JT Barrett was coming off the best game he'd ever played in his life, and life is all about balance, and so he played the worst game he ever played in his life. But also that
war that week, yeah.
But also Nick Mosa got kicked out of the game for targeting early in that game. Well, also, I mean, the quarterback play had been a topic of conversation the entire 2017 season. I don't know how often you look up and you go, somebody won off some fluke. Because even Oregon beating Ohio State in 2024, I mean, we said it when we previewed the Rose Bowl. Ohio State defense played horribly. How many times can you expect Ohio State's defense to play that badly again? They didn't the rest of the year, which is why they won 41-20 the next time they played them. So when Indiana wins by 10 points at Oregon, I don't think that's fluke. I don't think that's, one team played well and the other team played poorly. I think Indiana is just significantly better than Oregon. Because Fernando Mendoza did throw a pick six, and that's why they only won by 10 and not 17 or more. And I think that the privilege of being able to see Indiana in person has even more validated that idea that I left the Oregon game in 2024 in Eugene thinking these are the best teams in the country. Let's just see if they can play each other one more time or two more times. I left Indianapolis thinking Ohio State and Indiana are the best two teams in the country. Let's see if they can meet each other in the national championship game. And the only team who I think can actually get in the way of that is Georgia, and that's just because they have the horses. I don't think Oregon has the horses right now. I think they've got a good receiver. I think they've got a really young defense secondary that gives up a lot of stuff. I think Dante Moore can play hero ball sometimes when he doesn't need to play hero ball, and their offensive line is suspect. Indiana won by 10 on the road. So what are they going to be favored by on a neutral site?
I think that line actually might be surprising to people. It would not shock me if that line is like Indiana -3, like Indiana -2.5. Like I think that line might be a little bit shorter than people think.
Okay, I don't think Oregon's that good. I think Indiana is,
and that's fair. But
and we move on to our national championship game. I think. Okay, yeah, we'll look at this first. We got the two best teams in the country playing each other for two of us, and then fandom for another one of us.
Listen, what I'm not gonna let happen is Gillis picks an 11-1 Big Ten team to go to the national championship game be somehow construed as something insane. Because that's not what we're gonna do, and you got to know better than that. Come on, man.
Why do I have to
pick the 5 seed in the tournament last year? First off, by the way, the 8 seed won the tournament with 2 losses in the regular season, and 2, by the way, a team that played in the national championship game in my hypothetical bracket. and I pick an 11-1 Big Ten team to go to the national championship, and it's like Andrew's a moron. Can't believe he's such a fan. What an idiot! Come on,
There's
man.
someone in our
Come
chat,
on, man. It's an 11-1 Big Ten team going to the title game.
There's someone in our chat who has even pointed it out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, get an Oregon hat already. Maybe you think win the national championship. I will.
I don't know what you want us to say. This is. I don't know. I don't think anybody's spinning this.
This is good for narratives.
This is if we would have told our texter 614-350-3315, hey, the three of us are predicting the college football playoff. One of us says Oregon is playing in the national championship game. Which one of us do you think made that prediction?
Sure.
Jimmy.
There is not a soul.
Right. Jimmy's a good answer.
Yeah, Jimmy is a great answer. If it was just us three, okay, yeah. If it was Jimmy, then you two would split the votes. But there's not a. You would get 100% of the votes. So this is not a spin. This is just acknowledging that everyone who listens to this podcast or signed up for the text knows that you love Dan Lanning.
I think really highly of Lanning in Oregon. I think
So
they're really good.
So just own it. I own.
Yeah, like again, I am owning it. I think very highly of them, but like what it's like, oh, he's only doing this because he's a fan. It's like, come on.
Did we say
man.
that? Did we say that?
Yes, you said fandom. You said fandom like 3 times.
Yeah, I didn't say you were only doing it. I didn't say you
did
were
say
only,
fandom like 3 times.
I didn't say you were, but I did not say the words you are only
Oh,
doing
come
it.
on. All right. Now, all right. Now who's semantics?
Semantics.
Yeah,
Now who's
semantics.
semantics, Steven.
Semantics. Fandom. Semantics. All right, Stefan. Bucks or Indy?
This is a great graphic on the screen for the Big Ten right here. That one of these 3 teams will win a national championship. That is,
I love it.
yeah, that is good stuff for the Big Ten. I am picking Ohio State to win a national championship. I am picking the 2 seed to beat the 1 seed to eliminate chalk in my bracket to please you guys first and foremost. That was a great spin zone. Speaking of spin zones, it's weird because in talking in the Ohio State bubble that we do, you look at the Big Ten championship game and you say, Ohio State clean up your mess in the red zone, and you win that game maybe by 2 scores. Mm-hmm. But I think in the Indiana bubble, you can say the same thing, right? They were also settling for field goals, right? And I think the logical thing is to say like, well, it's harder for them to turn it around because they had to play Ohio State's defense. Okay, Indiana's defense is pretty good too, right? Mm-hmm. Stephen Daly did have a massive impact in that Big Ten championship game. I think this might be where his absence is really felt for Indiana. I know I said the last few matchups that, some of your parts, and I do think Indiana's defense can, like, I'm not saying Stephen Daly's out now. Ohio State's going to go from scoring 10 points to scoring 40 points against Indiana's defense. But I think Ohio State could maybe be better in the red zone because of an injury like that. I'm opting to trust Ohio State to lean on its fastball in the way that it did in the college football playoff last year. I've said that for the Georgia matchup, for the Miami matchup. For you guys, it was a Texas A&M matchup where I'm opted in to believe in that. And if they don't go away from that, and if they do the heavy personnel and everything that we saw them do against Indiana, then they might just lose to Miami or Georgia, and we don't have to worry about what it looks like when they play against Indiana, right? Like that. This is a tough path to get here. Not that last year's path was also tough, but guess what they did? They leaned on their fastball, and they were able to beat anyone that got in their way. And I think they can do that again this year. This game, a rematch between Ohio State and Indiana, I wonder if it ends up being something kind of like the Cotton Bowl last year, where it feels like Ohio State should pull away. They can't. Texas is good enough to stay in it. I think Indiana is more than good enough to stay in it. I think this ends up coming down to like the final possession again or something. And I really would not be surprised if it looked a lot like the Big Ten championship game, and it's just one team finds a way to score in the red zone, get a touchdown, and the other team doesn't. That's kind of what happened in Indy, right? Indiana was able to get that touchdown to Elijah Surratt toward the end of the game, and Ohio State just could not find any momentum in the red zone. I think it's something like that too. I'm going to opt into believing that Ohio State will rely on healthy Carnell Tate, healthy Jeremiah Smith, Max Clare, Brandon Ennis, rely on its weapons and win this game. But Indiana's got like you talk about having the horses, injury gets in the way. But Indiana's still got some dudes, right? Like Elijah Surratt and if you forget that Omar Cooper did not play 99% of that Big Ten championship game, and it sounds like he's going to be healthy and ready to go. And you add in what Becker did and kind of what they have there, like it's going to be really tough for Ohio State to put up that defensive performance again. It wouldn't surprise me if like maybe both teams are a little bit better in the red zone, and it ends up being like 24-20 instead of 13-10, and you just say, oh, it was the same exact game from Indy. They both just converted a bit more. But I'm going to trust Ohio State to kind of turn around after their loss in Indy. You mentioned, Andrew, with the potential Oregon-Indiana matchup, but it is hard to beat a team twice. You give Ryan Day some time to kind of figure out exactly how this offensive stuff is going to work, not just in terms of, the heavy packages or whatever, but like calling plays and how you prepare for a game. That it all looks a little bit different. What is a funny caveat for both of these teams, or actually I guess all three of these teams, depending on the matchup that you have, we had the entire, opening of the start of the early signing period and coaching changes leading into the Big Ten championship game. And then you talk about the playoff being like very ball talk. This will be kind of like right after the transfer portal window closes. So like these teams will be dealing with stuff. And as much as Ohio State dealt with the Chris Henry Jr. and the Brian Harline situation of it, Indiana's probably relying on the transfer portal more. So maybe that is something that Indiana actually the Ryan Day thing, like, well, they had to deal with it too. This might be the inverse where like Indiana had to deal with it more as opposed to, Ohio State dealing with the Chris Henry Jr. and the Brian Harline thing. So there's so many factors. I feel like I just rattled off like 10 things that could decide this game. I really do think that highly, like you, Steven, of this Indiana team. Like, I think they showed in Indianapolis, like, this is just a straight up good football team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a matter of like, is Ohio, like I said, Ohio State will kind of have it arm's length and then pull away at the end. I respect Indiana to the point where I just think it might be a back and forth game, and Ohio State just executes a few things cleaner than it did in Indy, and they wind up winning. So I'll take Ohio State, and I went back and forth on it a lot.
Gillis, tell us why you have Oregon winning the national championship.
Well, just real quick on the Indiana thing. I think Stefan's right. Like, none of us predicted Ohio State to curb stomp Oregon like they did in the Rose Bowl last year. You could have thought they were going to win, but nobody thought 34-0 in the second quarter. Like nobody had multiple score blowout bloodbath game. Now, so I say that like saying we're probably all, if it's Ohio State, Indiana, we're probably also going to say that. But I do think Stefan brought up like a really good point of like Ohio State's looking at it going, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, and Indiana's probably looking at it like, we missed a field goal. Like everybody's looking at Jaden Fielding's missed field goal. We missed a field goal too, and our kicker had not missed from that range all year. And Fernando Mendoza threw a pick in his own end that Kurt Cignetti about had a brain aneurysm arguing for DPI. There's like stuff on Indiana's end that they're saying, if we clean this up, Omar Cooper's there, maybe we attack Lorenzo Styles, maybe we complete a deep ball. Like there's stuff there. So I don't think we're getting blowout in that scenario. Ohio State, in my bracket, wins the national championship. They beat Oregon. I think we have like a 2015 type of game where I think Ohio State probably controls the scrimmage a little bit, controls the line of scrimmage a little bit more than they would against Indiana. Like Indiana definitely did some things in that game that made you look at it and go like, whoa, like that was interesting. Now, I haven't seen the juice that you would want from like a Mateu Uiagalelei this year. Like in a true dominant, like I think people kind of maybe thought he could be like a Ruben Bain type of player. Like, hey, this guy's a first round pick and he's a layup to be a top half of the first round guy. And I don't know if you've seen that. I do think Oregon has enough juice offensively to where, man, them hitting a couple deep strikes like on an Ohio State defense that for the most part plays really well is not out of the realm of possibility. I think this is just one of those games, if Ohio State plays Oregon, where it's Ohio State, maybe they take a punch early. Like in that 2015 title game that Ohio State won by 22 points, Oregon was winning 7-0, and that game was a 1-point game, like late in the third quarter, if memory serves. I think we might be in for something like that, and then a final score that ends 35-21, 34-20, 28-17, something along those lines, to where you're like, man, you know what? Like, Oregon hung with them, but just at the end of the day, Ohio State's just better. And Ohio State just got more talent, and they're better at certain areas. So I think Ohio State wins a national championship. I think they beat Oregon to do it. I think Oregon may be a year away from what like fully like loaded this team could be. I think Stefan, I think you and I were talking about it, where it was like Oregon had kind of maybe been building for 26. Like it feels like 26 might be their year, especially if Dante Moore comes back. You're gonna have DeCorian Moore coming back. I mentioned he's been hurt. Now he'll be back in the lineup. Like I think they're going to be healthier and better than they were in the regular season in the playoffs. But I think they have gotten better. I think that they've just gotten healthier, but I don't think it's enough to beat Ohio State.
I picked Ohio State, but I want to say it with this caveat. Win or lose, well, actually more win. If they lose, then obviously. Assuming they win their first playoff game, if it looks the way it looked the first 12 games of the year, I'm going to come on this podcast and say I no longer believe Ohio State's going to win a national title. But if they open it up and actually rely on their best weapons, then I'll double down on it right now. Because I think 13 games in, like, you can't just keep holding on to the idea they're going to do the thing that they have not done for 13 games. So I'll pick Ohio State for now. And it's because we do live in the Ohio State bubble, so we talk about things a certain way. Well, I don't know if, like, we talked about Ohio State's issues in the red zones against Indiana because we had been talking about them for 12 straight games. I do not think that was a talking point for Indiana coming into the game. So Ohio State struggling in the red zone was a result of they're not great in the red zone, and Indiana had the best red zone defense in the country. Versus, I don't know, Indiana's a decent red zone team, and Ohio State's the best defense in the country, right? It felt like Indiana not executing was more about Ohio State's defense. And maybe I'm giving too much credit to Ohio State versus the other way around, where it's like, see, this thing that's been an issue for 12 games is still an issue in game number 13. So can you please figure this issue out before it costs you another trophy this year? And I think that's the difference. And it's partially why we're all picking Ohio State to beat Indiana. Well, two of us are picking to beat Indiana. The other one is,
Picking them to beat a 11-1 Big Ten team. You're right.
What is Oregon's? I mean, they had an easy schedule. What is Oregon's fight song? I genuinely don't know. I'm not asking.
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. So whatever their fight song is, the joke is gone. Back to my point. The point is, I think the reason why we are all, Gillis, if you had picked Indiana to win and we would all be picking Ohio State to beat Indiana, is because there are issues where it felt like Ohio State needs to clean this up. And we had been saying, and you can apply that to multiple games through the year. I almost am interested to talk with Indiana writers about what is Indiana's inherent flaw, and did that show up again in the Big Ten championship game? Because if it didn't show up in the Big Ten championship game and Indiana only won by 3 points, all right, well, what if Ohio State cleans up its flaw? And by cleaning up its flaw, it means stop putting 5 tight ends on the field.
Yeah,
that's our bracket.
It makes you look back on when Ryan Day was talking about that 20-play drive to end the Michigan game, and he was like, not my favorite drive because it ended in a field goal. It was like, boy, was that foreshadowing for what was about to happen in Indianapolis.
Like, listen, man, you're through it. You got through the Michigan thing. You defeated your demon. You can stop trying to do that now. No more 20-play drives. Unless you're up by 14 already, then you can do what you want. But you know how I'm going to end this, man. The shirts are coming soon. Throw the ball. At the paper tape is saying, are the multiple tight ends covering an offensive line flaw? No, I don't think so. I do not think that is what is happening here. I think it's just they just believe they have 5 tight ends they can play. And it's the way that Keenan Bailey talked about it. I do not think it's because of the offensive line. Because if you look at their formations, it's not like all the tight ends are just constantly on the right side. They're lined up all over the place. It's just what they want to do offensively. And more, and if it's covering up an offensive line issue, that makes sense with 12 personnel, not 13 and 14 personnel. That's a little bit weird.
It also would concern me a little bit more because if you were doing it to cover your offensive line, then why was Indiana getting after Julian saying the way they were, even with all the tight end packages? Like, I think the question makes sense, right? If you have questions about your O-line, you put your tight ends out there more, but Indiana was still able to get after you. So it's like, I don't know, if Indiana's going to get after you anyways, you might as well just go 11 personnel and say, all right, they're coming, better make a play.
It might just, and it also might just be hubris. Like Ohio State just goes like, we can push people around. Like, of course we can. We're Ohio State. We can shove them down the field.
I think they just went through spring practice and fall camp and came to the conclusion that their best personnel packages were multiple tight end sets. And it's because Keenan Bailey feels like he's developed 5 tight ends who are ready to play football for him. And Brian Hartline and Devin Jordan clearly didn't think that they had multiple wide receivers that were ready to play for them this year. And so that's that, right? Like last year they had 2 dudes splitting the carries at running back. And so they had 2,000-yard rushing guys last year. Bo Jackson's going to have 1,000 rushing yards. I don't think anybody else is going to have over 600 this year. It's just they got to the end of the offseason and thought this were their best options. And 13 games in, that is not proven to be true. So you've got 3 weeks to go back to the drawing board. And the thing that better come out of this is we need to find a way to get the ball in Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith's hands as much as humanly possible, and then sprinkle in some Bo Jackson and call it a day. And Max Clare and Brandon Ennis. Just because, thank you for the $1.99, man. That means we're doing something well if we're getting money off of this. MH6133 is asking, how many guys do you see Ohio State taking in the portal? I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 10. I don't think they have to go overboard with it. I think they'll just do the normal amount. And I think it's part of the reason why you saw such a heavy recruiting class this year is they don't want to have to go heavy in the portal. But I do think they'll probably find a defensive end because they need to find a defensive end. And anything else, we talked about this on the Monday pod, and we kind of deep dove into every single position group. So you can go check that out there. In the meantime, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Those are our predictions for the college football playoff. We're also going to go live again tomorrow. We're giving you a twofer this week because we're not going to go live next week because we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff in the Woody. So tomorrow we're going to be ranking the 12 college football playoff head coaches. We were supposed to do the quarterbacks, but I sent the wrong survey to our texters, so we flipped it. We all make mistakes in life, but that's what we're doing. So get the text if you want to participate in these surveys. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis and producer Brennan, I'm Steven. See you guys later.